Okay, so here we go. It's Karutashi and Fay Adams. I'm really pleased that you had time and the patience, because it took us some time to get together and make this recording. And I'm really grateful that you have this time, and finally, despite technical issues, that we are able to do it. So Fay is a senior mindfulness teacher from the Mindfulness Association. You've been taught directly by Rob Naren, who is a founder of the Mindfulness Association. You were one of his guinea pigs, really, for the mindfulness training on the Holy Isle. And you've been practicing since 13 years, right? Meditation, and you've been taught by many different teachers, Buddhist and secular, and you attend regularly retreats, and you attended many retreats, silent retreats and group retreats, and you name it, retreats, and and you are as well one of the teachers at the Aberdeen University, teaching the compassion and mindfulness module. And I wanted to talk with you because I know you personally, and you have a tremendous influence on me learning the mindfulness from that Mindfulness Association school. You basically pushed me into it. You said you should do it. And I absolutely love your style because you are simply yourself. You are very grounded, and you are honest and transparent, and you are just a normal human being. You don't, play out any role. And what is important for me as well, you actually do the practice. You walk your talk, and one who knows you, they can see it, they can feel it. You are present, and you are just natural and normal and so on. And I absolutely love and adore, and I'm very inspired by the way that you are as a teacher and as a person. And now, and now you are a mom, and it's fabulous. I really wanted to tap into how does the person who practiced for many years and it's teaching is coping with parenthood, because as we all know, this is the toughest job there is. Well, that's how I see it, and I haven't been a parent, but I've been assisting lots of families, and that's how I see it. I bow my head to all parents who manage not to traumatize properly their kids and and went through parenthood, because this is a really big job. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And can I ask you to lead a really short practice so we can settle in, and everyone who's listening could hear your amazing voice and be led into grounding and settling into the present?
Yes, of course.
Great. Oh.
So maybe we can begin by simply opening up our attention using our senses and beginning to notice what we can hear, and what we can feel with our body, and any other sensory input. Letting the sounds come and go, noticing how our body is resting and supported, how our hands are resting, aware of feeling warm or cool. Maybe noticing whether we can take in shapes and space with our eyes, if our eyes are open. So, feeling how we're sitting, we've planted our bodies in the midst of the world happening all around us, sensing our ability to come to stillness in the midst of all the activities of our day. Maybe in the middle of our experience, we might notice our breath. So not removing our attention from sounds and from other sensory input, but just also noticing our breath. Gentle flowing of in-breath followed by out-breath. And if there are all kinds of thoughts that come and go and sometimes take over our attention, that's completely fine. Just aware of that and coming back to this simple sitting with an open attention, body resting, with nothing to do. And then coming to a close for now with our practice.
Well, that was so interesting, because how we are taught in the mindfulness-based living course is to move from the breath into the world. And here we are already in the world, and then becoming as well aware of the breath while already aware of everything else and the body. So nice.
Yeah, I guided it that way because I really like to sit that way at the moment. And I guess in the mindfulness trainings, you have to teach things a certain way. But then as you go on and your practice develops over time, you find different adjustments that you want to make.
That's fab. I'm of course going to take that on board, and I can't wait to, just do the sitting when we finish on my own. This is so brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing this.
You're welcome.
Great. So, because this interview is not that long, the first question will be about your background story. So, why mindfulness? Why you decided? So, I'm just gonna give you maybe key things that I want you to mention. So basically, I remember you were studying anthropology in London, and you were living normal life, a you know, student working or studying a lot and very head oriented knowledge, and then something happened with the health, and then somehow you go to Holy Isle, totally dream-like place, far away from civilization. Could you tell me in short why you doing mindfulness, why you got into meditation?
Yeah, well, it feels like an important story for my life, because I had a life that was very different before I got into mindfulness compared to how it was afterwards. And that was a real turning point for me. And it all came about because I began to have chronic pain. So I was, as you said, living in London and being busy, and I was doing community work, and I loved what I was doing, but I began to experience very debilitating chronic pain in my head and neck and shoulders and my back. And it became so debilitating that I needed to really give up everything I was doing. I couldn't continue to work, I couldn't continue to live on my own, and I needed to find some completely different way of being. And I had tried everything under the sun, other different types of treatments, could be everything from conventional drugs to alternative therapies. So eventually a physiotherapist said, why don't you try mindfulness? And so I found a mindfulness course happening off the coast of Scotland on a small island, as you said, as a long way from civilization. And I went there for a week, and I ended up becoming a volunteer cook. And I stayed there in the end for 6 years, believe it or not, on this very small island. And that's where I learned about what mindfulness was. And I became a student of Rob Nairn. I also got teachings from many different people who visited Holy Isle. And during that time, the Mindfulness Association grew, and I was part of that growth. But what I'd like to say, maybe for people who are listening and for anyone who is struggling with something, it could be a physical difficulty or even a psychological difficulty. When I first went on that mindfulness retreat, I remember the overwhelming feeling that it was impossible to practice mindfulness with my pain. The two were not able to happen at once. And I thought, I can't sit with this. It's too painful, it's too overwhelming. And anyway, the pain makes it impossible for me to be able to do the practice. I can't concentrate, I can't breathe well, I can't, engage at all. So it's strange that I didn't give up, actually. I don't know why I didn't give up. Something in me had a sense that it was worth persisting. And I did find that it was the one thing, and so far still the only thing, that has been able to help, and that has eventually restored my life to a place where I can function mostly normally most of the time. So that's the story.
It's amazing. It's a good start of a book.
Yes.
Yeah. It's amazing. Great. So what would you say is the key to the success when somebody is starting the meditation? Because many people start, then sometimes they give up, then they start again, or they read a lot. Personally, I say to people, do not read, just start practicing. But everyone is different and the approaches are different. What is the key success? When does mindfulness work?
That's a good question. I think it works when you find a teacher who you can interact with one-to-one and who you can ask questions to and who can address things with you so that you don't fall down the potholes, because there are potholes with mindfulness, and so that you are able to, if you have some sense of discouragement, that you can talk about that and find that actually that too can come into the practice and be part of the process. So and I think not just a teacher but a group can help that as well, because the group creates a community around practice which enables you to support each other, and you'll see that somebody will get discouraged or have a really big struggle with something, and then they'll come through and that will give you faith, and the same will happen to you, and everybody keeps going. So it's something about having the support to be able to keep going despite the hard work and the difficulties, because practicing isn't something that you can just do and feel nice all the time. Something doesn't always, but you can sit with and be and move through and be supported through the difficult times, then change can happen in ways that you can't imagine, really, I think.
And so I guess into that is written in the regularity, the repetition of the practice. Is it important to, I mean, this is a rhetorical question for me, but I just want people I'm going to show it to hear it from somebody more advanced, you know. Is it important to practice regularly?
Yes, I think it is. But I'm also very aware that it's something that many, many people struggle with. So you need to be very realistic about how your life is and what you can do, and commit as much as you can, but not become unkind to yourself about your practice and whether you manage to do it or not. So it's like a balance between kindness and acceptance of how your life is, and discipline and commitment to the practice. Finding a balance between those. The discipline and the commitment are very important, and there's no doubt that the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. But you can also, and we'll probably talk about this because I think you're going to ask me about parenthood, you can also practice in your life in ways that might not look like a formal kind of practice, and you can practice for short periods of time. You can practice for regular shorter periods, and for some people also who are in intense times in their lives, that can help and be important, you know, not to have that pressure to practice full pelt. So it's not, I don't think there's a clear answer. I think it's really important to be wise and to look at your patterns. How you relate to practice will be different from the next person. And if you can look at the patterns you bring to how you relate to the idea of a discipline in your life, of practice and giving time to it each day, that might also be helpful. Because if you're somebody who's very tough on yourself and drives yourself really hard, then you need to soften and maybe open up to kind of, you know, being flexible. And then obviously the other way, if someone's too easy on themselves, then maybe they need to somehow guide themselves to become more structured.
Yeah. So if somebody decides to join the course or like been on the course, more or less, how much will because I know people will ask me, people want to know the numbers, people love numbers. So what would be like, you know, the maximum, and well, the maximum would be every day, I guess. And what would be the minimum that makes sense?
I think I can't give one answer again, because I know that some people practice as much as they can, and that's not actually very much, and they're doing their very best. And people who are having struggles in their lives may experience it that way, and so to try to force themselves to do a lot of practice is not a good idea. But let's talk about an average person who is trundling along in their life and doing really okay, not struggling too much at the moment. Then I would say, if you can, I mean, the home practice is all mapped out, and I think it's sort of half an hour to 45 minutes a day. If you can do that every day, you'll notice huge changes in your life. Even that, you know, it's not a big percentage of the hours that you're awake, but you will notice changes. Maybe you might want one day off a week. Let's say 6 days a week. You know, it's up to you, but that's what's recommended, and that will bring about all sorts of interesting developments in your life. Yeah.
I wanted to inspire people and I've created a group, and online we meet every morning 5:45 to practice Monday to Friday, half an hour, and because most of them go to work after. And in this group, it's automatically recorded. So when somebody joins in later, they can just listen to it. There are people who are there every day since the beginning. And it's amazing. I'm really impressed. I'm there every day because I have to lead it. But, you know, and it, you know, pushes me to always wake up at 5 to get ready for that. But yeah, because people were struggling, they would finish the course and then, oh, it's so difficult, because nobody around meditates in their life, especially in Poland. It's such a new thing. Great, thank you so much. Yeah. So now the juicy thing, parenthood. Yep. Well, it was. It's a very surprising journey for you. When we met, you thought that's not gonna happen. You didn't plan that. And I had a feeling you will be a mom, and thanks God you are, because now I don't have to. No, now I can learn from you, and so many other people can learn from you. So tell me, how was the pregnancy and the practice? And another question, I already gonna add it here because I know we don't have much time. Can person start mindfulness training when pregnant? So how was your pregnancy and practice, and is it advisable?
Yeah. I think what first comes to mind is to talk about practice and sleep. I think a huge theme throughout pregnancy and early parenthood is sleep. And when you ask me about my pregnancy, what comes to me most clearly about my practice during that time is that I fell asleep every time I practiced. Maybe not in the second trimester, but notoriously the first and the last trimester are very tired times for most mums to be. And I had no control over this sleep that would come over me. Very, very powerful sleep, just completely take over. And I couldn't do anything about that. So I had to just be with that. Then as a new mum, sleep becomes something that you prize so much. And for me, I have to say, sleep has to even come before practice. Otherwise, things really become very difficult in my life. I'll be, you know, my partner will testify to that. He'll, you know, I become moody, for example, if my sleep really goes so low. So I need to prioritize sleep. And if I can practice around the sleep, then I'm grabbing a few opportunities for practice. So during the pregnancy and in parenthood, if I can practice while I'm falling asleep, or if I'm practicing, then the sleep comes. I practice as much as I can before and after. Then yeah, there's opportunities there. So lying down might sometimes be all I can do. You know, I'm lying down, I'm grabbing a moment to just get a bit of sleep so that I can kind of recharge. And as I fall asleep, I'm aware of my breath, and I'm just letting myself kind of ease into being held by whatever's holding my body, and gentle kind of letting go of all the 101 things that are going on around me, the doing mode, and then coming out of sleep as well, just coming back into awareness and noticing what the mind's up to, and noticing the movement back into doing, I guess. So that a lot of my practice as a mum is like that. Yeah, so practice and sleep was what comes to mind immediately. There was a specific question there you asked, what is it a good idea to start practicing?
Yeah, because I have somebody who's I think planning to be pregnant or is pregnant at the beginning, and she asked if it's okay to go to that course. Well, I have changed the time framework. I decided to experiment with my supervisor. She's aware of it. Instead of 2 hours a week, it's 5 hours, including lunch, every 2 weeks, plus the morning live meditations, plus they can always get in touch with me through WhatsApp, like 24 hours, and I respond when I'm working. But I can at least vocalize the question, and very often you get your own answers. So, so yeah, is it advisable for somebody who, you know, did not practice before and maybe struggled for some time already with their emotions, and maybe have a, you know, it's been difficult up till now, they're settling in, accepting how things are, but as well getting ready for parenthood? And is that a good thing to start, or, you know, wait a few years? And
I would say it will be a help for somebody, unless they're in crisis in their life. So I guess I would say that if things are very, very challenging, then no, not a good idea perhaps. But if you check in with yourself and ask yourself, is this a good idea? Is this a wise thing to do for now? Am I supported? And you don't feel too compromised, then yes, absolutely, it'll be a help. It'll be a tool for you, and a wonderful time to start. Especially if you have some maternity leave at some point, then you once your maternity leave starts, you've got lots of time. You can dedicate yourself, and there are lots of books on pregnancy, mindful parenting. You can read up on it and get inspired.
Cool. Right, so the parenthood, baby is out, it's demanding attention all the time. You cannot switch it off and put on the flight mode. How is your practice? So I guess you answered that question earlier, really, but so tell me, you know, what would you like to share? Like, what inspires you? What's, you know, I mean, you've been prepared for this. You are prepared for sailing that boat on the storm, because you've been practicing for many years. I say to people, it's best if you're feeling good now, don't waste this time. This is the time for your training. You don't go to train in the storm. Don't come in the winter when you're depressed and then you say, oh, Caro, please, you know, no, come earlier when you're good, because that's when you're happy, that's, you know, and you've been prepared for the storm of parenthood, of up and down and hormonal changes and feeding and pain and fatigue. And so how is your practice? How do you think it supports you? What would you like to share? Because yeah, we don't have much time, and I leave it to you. What would you like to share about parenthood and your practice?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I rely very, very heavily on my practice. All of the practice I've done feels like the ground on which I'm walking as a parent. So everything from being with my little boy's emotions to the challenge of not having any time for myself, to sleep deprivation, to no time for my relationship, to these incredibly intense moments when you're standing there and your body, you wish you had 5 arms, because it is physically impossible to do what needs to be done in that moment. You've got a baby, you've got like somebody's needing you to move the car, and you know it's all happening at once. You know, these moments come. So practicing amidst all of that, being present as much as I can, not overreacting to things, being kind to myself in amongst it all, finding a way to tolerate the intensity and how it affects my emotional experience. Yeah, I'm relying on my practice. I'm really relying on my practice for all of that. I think I'd like to use the example of being with my son's emotions. I think that's a really good one. So when he cries, I think there's a very programmed response. It's very powerful. Do something. Especially when he was younger. Now he's a toddler, so his crying can be much more about wanting. I want this, I don't want that. So it's not quite so intense. But when he was more a baby, in babyhood, his cry had such a strong effect on my emotional experience. I could feel very almost panicked or desperate, that I had to do something, and if I couldn't do something, it was very difficult. So I know that for him, it's very, very helpful if I don't get swept away in how I'm feeling, because he needs me to be there as his anchor.
Yeah,
I can use my mindfulness as my anchor, then I can be an anchor for him.
Yeah.
And I really feel grateful to my practice for that, because I can see how in the midst of what's going on for him, I can be there and be a holding presence as a mother for what's happening. So that's a nice example, I think. That's been a very important thing for me. Yeah, and then in terms of finding time to practice, there are always moments, however crazy it all is, there are always moments that you can grab some time to practice. So maybe he's fallen asleep in the car and I've had a little nap now, and now I can practice. I fell asleep in the car too. No. Or while breastfeeding, or feeding, any kind of feeding, what the mother decides. So you're spending many hours doing that at the beginning. Strangely, I found it and still find it quite difficult to practice when I'm feeding. I had this imagination before being a mum that I would have loads of time to practice because I'd be feeding my baby a lot. And I don't know what it is. My suspicion it's something to do with being very, very busy and feeling that there's a huge amount to do, and then stopping to feed, and then again going off doing again. And that transition from having a lot to do to stopping is difficult. So the mind is still That's when I would practice as much as I can self-compassion. And especially in the evening when feeding my son to sleep, every night I would do self-compassion and just let myself release the kind of craziness of the day, especially at the beginning, you know, when every day is crazy. Yeah, I think I'm sure I could talk about that for much longer.
You could write a book.
But those are a couple of thoughts. Yeah.
The last mini question, somebody asked me recently, the person is I think in between kids, or there's a lot going on. She knew she've met the mindfulness practice and did that before, and in short, she finds that only in crisis moments, when somebody died, when there was some relationship extreme issues, she was able to connect with the practice. But now when things are just, you know, average, normal, but, you know, difficult, you are a mom, she finds that she doesn't have the content of life, that she can't, you know, connect to the present moment and be joyful about it. I'm suspecting she's just tired. But the question that she asked was, how can I get back? Can I reconnect? You know. So I thought maybe I can ask you.
How can I reconnect with herself?
How can I reconnect with the practice? Because I seem to only be able to get into it in extremes, when close person to me died, when there was extreme relationship issue. And now when I'm a mom, okay, there's difficulties, but it's okay. And I don't connect to, you know, the fullness of life, to my practice. It's difficult to practice, and I just don't feel happy. I don't want to only connect to my practice in the extremes.
Yeah, I know how she feels. I've noticed when I have an extreme situation in my life, my practice, I sometimes do myself suddenly practice a lot more. And I feel very motivated, and it can be quite a powerful experience. So in the kind of humdrum daily grind of being a parent and all the things that need doing, it's hard. And I think there is a level of disconnection. I don't know how old her children are. So sorry? Small. So sometimes, and I can't be sure this is the case for her, but I know it is for me, you are disconnected from yourself to some degree, because you don't have time for yourself. Then when you're disconnected from yourself, you don't want to practice, because something it feels easier to be busy somehow. And then reconnecting with yourself isn't easy to do. But I think if we can seek out what inspires us and connect what inspires us to the practice, that can be a way to reconnect. So if she has time to, you know, read something that's inspiring, or watch something that's inspiring about mindfulness, or even about just something that feeds her soul, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That helps her to remember who she is. Someone told me a really beautiful story which affected me quite strongly when I heard it. It was a story told to him by a Native American teacher of his, who said that he was asking, what's the meaning in your culture? What's the meaning of the word sacred? So the Native American man was answering, well, the sun's sacred, the trees are sacred, all the animals are sacred, the grass is sacred, etc. So the man said, well, is there anything that's not sacred? And the Native American teacher said, yes, adults between the age of 20 and 50 are not sacred. So he said, why? Why? And he said, because they're having children and they run ragged and they're half crazed because they're being parents. And that's why the fathers long for the time in his culture when they can go away hunting and get away from the mothers and the babies. And the mothers, what they need, and this is really built into their culture, what they need is for the older, the elders and people without children to support them and to give them the time to remember who they are. So that's the important bit. That really affected me when I heard that. If the grandmothers or somebody can just give you a bit of time so that you can remember who you are. Yeah, so that story comes to mind. I don't know if that's relevant to the person you're talking about. But if you think mindfulness is a way of remembering who you are, if you can do a bit of practice and just sit and be and maybe go into nature and just feel yourself as part of life, remembering who you are that way.
Wow, amazing. This story is, yeah, that's spot on. Last one. Mindfulness and meditation. Sometimes I've got a group called Mindfulness Gardens, and that appeared, there's discussion about what is mindfulness, what is meditation? Is there a difference? Is just a Western word? Meditation is everything, you know. How is it for you?
Yeah, mindfulness is a way of being. It's about being present in the moment, with openness. Meditation is something you do. You sit on a cushion and you do it, or you do it sitting on the bus. You do it. It's like an intentional thing that you do, whereas mindfulness is a way of being. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Cool. And the program is called Mindfulness Meditation. So it's like one thing or two things?
Well, you can sit down and do meditation using mindfulness. You can sit down and do meditation using another method. So maybe that's another important part of answering the question, that meditation is a wider word in the sense that people refer to many things when they say meditation. It might be a very different kind of meditation to mindfulness meditation. But mindfulness is being present in the moment with openness, and you can do that as you meditate. Yeah. If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Thank you so much. Could I ask you on the end to lead maybe like just 3 minutes compassion or like, yeah, self-kindness practice, something that people can use for those challenging moments or any type of little inner struggle?
Okay, sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Could I use the bell?
Yeah.
Okay. I got this one from Rika.
So maybe we can take a moment to see if we can feel how we are, what's happening for us. just being present with what's here, within our body, within our mind, and within our heart. If there's anything challenging present, then just taking a little bit of extra care in acknowledging that, without wanting to move it away or suppress it if we can. Just giving space for it. And it might be helpful to put our hands on our heart. Feeling our body breathing beneath our hands. Sense of tender life taking place within our body. See if our hands can be gentle and soft in their touch. And again, acknowledging what's there. Again, acknowledging anything that's present, especially if it's difficult. Almost as if our hands can acknowledge. And remembering that we, like everyone else, have these difficult times, that it's part of being human, and it connects us to all of humanity. We're not alone. And then we can ask ourselves, how can I be kind to myself? May I be kind to myself? And releasing our hands, sitting for a moment. And seeing if we can take a little bit of that kind attitude with us as we continue with our day. Carolina, I can't hear you. I think you turned your microphone off.
Yes, I did, because there are so many noises. I live now in city center, and there's so much noise here, and I didn't want that sound, to go through there. Thank you so much. This was so useful. I think this will serve so many people. I will, as soon as I can, add the Polish subtitles and upload it so people can watch. Thank you so much for your time. This is really, really precious.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you. I will stop the recording. Thank you. And stop. Do you want to stop? Yes, if okay, you will receive a